This decade saw the introduction of VR to the mainstream.
But did it also kill it?
Hot take.
Virtual reality.
We're basically looking at the sidelines of time here, folks. This has been an impressive decade when it comes to virtual reality. Many of you may not know this, but virtual reality video gaming existed all the way back into the 90s with companies like Virtuality who made VR headsets that you could play in arcades. A couple of companies attempted to bring it home, some with less success, some with more success. Even the early 2000s saw some VR. The thing is, it didn't really take off. Not until this decade where we seriously saw a lot of companies just throw into it, but it all started in one specific place that really got the hype train going.
Yeah, so this has been the defining decade for VR, starting very much in 2010 with the first prototype from that would then become the Oculus. And we saw pretty much that buzz starting in the early 2010s, really peaking in 2016, which is when all of the VR headsets hit the consumer market. And it's kind of died down a little bit. We've seen a lot of games come out. You know, you have Oculus doing their thing. You have the Valve doing their thing. And then you have PlayStation VR targeting the console market. But it doesn't seem to be getting that same energy that everyone thinks it should. Like, I remember I was at E3 2015. There was VR prototypes everywhere. There was like people with guns walking on like these things that you almost saw from Ready Player One. And everyone's like, VR is the next big thing. And here we are 2019. And yes, we have a very interesting exclusive VR game coming very soon, but it's still very niche.
Yeah, it is.
So is this the end, or is this the turning point, and will the 2020s kind of be that time where VR really soars?
I think we're going to see either the like lockdown success of it or the death of it right at the beginning of 2020, definitively. So here's how this works for me. This is going to sound nuts, because it is. There are more VR headsets on the market than video game consoles right now. That doesn't mean that more people have bought them. It just means there are more options out there for you to get VR. There are a whole bunch of VR headsets, a Samsung VR. There are VR headsets like Google Daydream. There's VR headsets like Google's paper headsets and stuff. Google Cardboard. There's the mainstream ones from Oculus. They have several different variations. We have HTC, and they worked with Valve to create the HTC Vive. There's also the Valve Index. Oculus has their own independent headset called the Oculus Quest. There are so many freaking headsets, so much to the point that even Switch, Nintendo, has their own Switch VR headset, which is the Labo VR headset.
Which is kind of, but yeah, it counts. It kind of counts.
It kind of counts, yeah. There are just so many variations. Here's the thing, though. It's so confusing and so weird to get out there and to know which headset to get. Some are very expensive, requiring thousands of dollars worth of equipment to actually get them to run properly. Others require very little investment. Oculus Quest, I think, is the single solution that exists, because you just get the headset and then you're off and you're good to go.
Yeah, it's just weird, though, that the conversation is still around the hardware at this point. You're not, in my opinion, so I've tried a bunch of different VR, and it's very much Beat Saber is kind of my go-to. Beat Saber is the game. You need VR, and I'm never playing Beat Saber and wishing, I wish this wasn't available in not VR, because it doesn't make sense outside of VR.
Yeah.
I feel that's the one game, and sure, you have a lot of other games that they are unique in VR, but it doesn't have quite that same level of, like, you know, when we went into the 3D games and you have Mario 64, and that was the game that you're like, oh, I get it. This is why I want to get rid of my 2D platformers and play 3D at that time. That was like the shift. And I feel Beat Saber is that for VR, but we're not, like, how do you expand that to other games? There's just not enough games building the conversation isn't around the games yet.
I agree. When it comes to Beat Saber is basically, not to belittle it, is Guitar Hero. It's Guitar Hero where blocks are coming at you and you're supposed to do a specific action at a specific point. Instead of pushing a button, you're swinging your hands around. And it works a lot better. I have had a lot of fun playing Beat Saber on multiple devices. It is one of the greatest VR games. And because I would have to assume it is the one VR game that keeps selling on every VR headset that's out there that supports it, it seems to be the one that everybody really owns too.
Yeah. Now, if we do look at the hardware, though, because that is where the conversation is, and you look at the last decade, I remember at the beginning of the decade, the big challenge was overcoming motion sickness. And I'd say they pretty much overcame that for the most part. And then the next step was, well, how do you get controls in VR? And that's where we started seeing the all the different hand controllers. Specific. And now with the Index, now we're actually getting the detection of finger movement instead of just having hands open and close. So maybe it's do you think the tech is where it needs to be to have those good games, or is there still a lot more development needed on the hardware side?
Now, I've played a lot of VR headsets at this point, very weird offshoot ones that have never seen any success anywhere, to larger ones like the Valve Index. I recently picked up a Valve Index because guess what? Half-Life Alyx is coming out, and if you think I'm sitting on the side for that, that's not happening.
The marketing worked on you.
Oh, yes, it did. So I played that. It's not bad, but it's not perfect. Again, just like every other VR headset, there's things about it that it misses a point. It doesn't track you properly. It's just all of them are like that. So it's not a perfect streamlined experience. This headset specifically, the Index, has such a high frame rate that I don't get sick anymore while playing it. I used to get sick on other VR headsets that have a lower refresh rate, but this one is so much better that anytime I'm doing any kind of physical movement forward or backwards, I've noticed that I really don't get that sickness. And that's great. That's a very important thing. You don't want to get sick while playing VR, because if you're going to throw up or something, you have like this thing on your head and then you don't know where it's happening.
Nobody wants to
it's
deal
not
with
great.
that.
But there's like a whole bunch of problems with that as well. Some games can just not run that well on the headset. Even if you have that high refresh rate headset, the game might not support the high refresh rate. There are just so many factors that go into it. But with that being said, there's a lot of things about restriction, having the wire coming out the back of your head.
And I was going to talk about the PlayStation VR, which has so many damn wires.
Yes.
It's their first iteration, so I'm going to go easy on them, but I do not like, I demoed a bunch of the games when I came out at launch. They sent me a unit, and there's so much, like, you get an extra like processor box, and like 5 cables come out of that thing. Way too many cables just running around your living room. So I do like the directions going. We are seeing more and more innovation on the headsets to have less cables, more power and everything. I think we're going to probably see all of those challenges being over, they're going to overcome all those challenges in the next 5 years or so. But it's really kind of frightening that there's no greater conversation about the game. It's still very much the hardware. And if you can't get games to work in a way that's really exciting for the mass market, and we're not seeing more games, pass those big milestones like 1 million copies sold, there's not much future for VR if they can't get the software to back up the hardware.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about platforms, usually we talk about exclusives to a platform that really sells what that platform is.
Yeah.
When we think about Nintendo consoles, we think about Mario, Pokemon, things like that. When it comes to VR, the exclusives on VR are kind of weird because there are certain exclusives on Oculus. There's certain exclusives on PlayStation VR. There's certain exclusives on Steam, technically, and you don't see those other places. It's not a very common thing.
Yeah.
But realistically, the one company that seems to be having the most consistent success with VR is Sony with the PSVR headset. It's the easiest way to get in. I would argue it has the best library, I would argue, in terms of like first-party games or like at least exclusives.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people out there who already own a PlayStation VR, that investment is like $200 for the headset or whatever it might be, depending on where you get it. And it's not that expensive if you get it with the PSVR. A whole system ready to go. You get a little bit more power than what I believe is capable with the Oculus Quest. You get a lot less power than what you get with the PC, but you save money because of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really why that's happened. Now, what we're seeing with, or what we're hearing about the PlayStation 5 is coming into the next year, we're probably going to hear something about PS5 actually having new versions of a PSVR headset.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to work?
I expect a lot more from a VR headset with PlayStation 5. You're going to have a lot more power. I think that you're going to have a lot more advanced tech in it. It does come down, though, to the game, and I just don't see how they're going to make it work. A lot of the great games, like the Batman game, the Batman Arkham, I forget what it's called. Fantastic experience, but it takes 45 minutes to complete. And most VR games, you go in and you're like, oh, this is so cool. I'm Batman. I can do all these things. I can throw my batarangs and all that. But like, how do you make a VR game? Like, Beat Saber has that replayability factor. It's worth the investment, but anything else like a Batman game, like, are you really going to spend $30, $40 just for a 40-minute experience, which is kind of what the VR experiences are right now?
That's true. That's really the big problem. My personal favorite PSVR game that I have played and is exclusive to the Sony platform is Astrobot Rescue Mission. It is fantastic. Astrobot Rescue Mission is legitimately one of the greatest video games I have played ever, and it just happens to be in VR, and people aren't playing it. It's like, I've already, you know what it's like? Everyone's talking about Half-Life Alyx selling VR to people, and I think it's got a name brand associated with it that will drive people to want to pick it up. But as I've experienced, for a game made in VR that
Yep.
really sells VR and tells me this is what VR is, that's the game. This is the best game in VR, and no one is playing it. So if a Half-Life Alyx can't do it, and it's got the name brand,
Yep.
there's no chance.
No.
I don't think that even if Sony introduces another VR headset,
Yep.
I can't imagine it would work, because what are they going to do? Release another greatest game ever? Like,
Well,
you just can't.
what if
You can
they
only do
tie
that so much.
what if they tie one of their greater IPs to that game that you mentioned, the Astro Rescue Bot?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Astrobot Rescue Mission.
I got some of the words in there. If they associated a stronger IP to that kind of gameplay, do you think that could help it? And that's really what we're seeing Valve doing here with the Half-Life game. I feel they're going in because they have a lot of confidence to bring back the Half-Life brand and franchise and tie it to a VR game. That shows me that this is their best, and they have the confidence that it's going to work and it's going to work. And if that fails and people aren't talking about the game and the experience and that you need to experience it in VR, I don't see a future for VR unless something drastic changes.
Yeah, for me, it's one of those things where I mean, it's so hard to think of a way that VR is going to work in the future. Again, one of the problems is there's so many headsets out there. A lot of those headsets, unfortunately, have to die. They have to. The companies have to stop producing them. I think it's time for HTC to walk out of the scene and go into the sunset. I think Oculus is a cool kind of product design, but they've got their own problems, and their messaging is all flawed and weird. The Oculus Quest should be the groundbreaking, like a groundbreaking success that everybody wants, but it's not working. And their product line is getting really mixed and confusing. Sony has one headset, like that's it, and they've got it right. That's it. You get that, you play the games, and
what do you
that's all
think
it
if you
is.
tie a social phenomenon game? So something like that's what we saw with Ready Player One.
Sure.
It's a social game. So a World of Warcraft, but like a VR kind of, if I knew what it was, other companies would be doing it right now. I'm not saying I know the answer, but a social VR experience. Do you think it's something more that direction that'll really that'll take off?
We already have those experiences. We do. We have VR chat. We've got a bunch of other VR headsets in there, and I know there's a couple things. One of the VR games I played, someone set up a screen in the space, and they were watching a movie, and a whole bunch of people just logged onto the room and just started watching this movie in this dude's space, and we were all watching. I think it was like some movie that should not be streamed legally. It was Jungle Book, I think.
Oh my
but
God.
I didn't know what I didn't go, oh, I want to watch the Jungle Book movie. So it's not like I went out of my way to do that. But it was there. And that experience, this is really cool. Then I stopped and I was like, I don't know. This just feels like PlayStation Home. You remember that?
Oh God,
Yeah.
I don't try to remember.
So
that.
it was just that. It was just that kind of experience. And I didn't get pulled in. Like, I think what you always saw in the movies was the world connects and you feel like you're there.
Yeah.
But in reality, it doesn't feel like that. Plus, if you're not playing PlayStation VR, where everyone has the same hardware across the board, when you're playing other VR headsets, everyone has different hardware. One person might have a lower resolution. One person might have finger tracking. One person might just be using a controller, so their hands just stay to the side the entire time. There's just so many options out there, and it needs to get simplified. If Oculus Quest becomes the defining portable unit, then that's going to work going forward for them. The Oculus Quest can essentially be the Nintendo DS or the Switch of VR, which would be really cool. Home consoles can be VR, and Valve with the Index can charge $2,000 to whoever wants to be there and try that out, and that's fine. But I think that as we go forward, if they don't simplify things and they don't find success with this stuff, I don't think there's a way out. I think they're just going to keep putting really expensive products on top of really expensive products and bury everybody on cost.
Ultimately, unless there's something I really can't imagine or think of, I think it's going to remain niche because inherently there's just something off-putting about putting something in front of your on top of your face and just being disconnected from the world around you. Like, give me a controller, let me lay back on the couch and just be chill. If my phone's ringing, I can see it. If there's someone that walks into the living room or something, I'm there. That's comfortable. Putting something where I'm disconnected from the world around me, there's something just inherently not so comfortable with that. And I think I'm not the only one that thinks that way.
I think there's a lot of people. But folks, what do you feel about VR? Do you think this is the end? Do you think we're going to see more of it in the future? Or do you believe that this whole decade was just a run-up to getting VR to work properly? It took them 10 years to get to this point, and people are still not playing it that much. Do you think we need another 10 years? Let us know what you think in the comments below.